The views expressed in this blog are hosted on my own website, are strictly personal, and do not reflect the views of any organization. Hello and welcome once again to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where, as the title suggests, I comment with a straight bat. This week, my focus on a topic which sadly is proving divisive when ideally it should prove unifying. I am referring to Operation Ganga, the government of India's code name for the operation to rescue our 20,000 odd citizens who are stuck in war-torn Ukraine, especially students. Ideally, a complex operation like this, an evacuation operation from a war zone, should be completely free of politics and should focus only on the humanitarian dimension involved. Sadly, that's not happening. The war in Ukraine has coincided with the last stretch of another war, the war for votes in India's most populous and politically crucial state of Uttar Pradesh. And not surprisingly, there are netas, especially those from the ruling BJP, who've chosen this opportunity to gather a little bit of political mileage during elections. Prime Minister Modi, for example, was in Sonbhadra in eastern UP, where he was quoted as saying, "It's because of India's rising power that we are able to evacuate our citizens from Ukraine." Now, you could argue that all is fair in love, war and elections, but the fact is Kiev and Kharkiv are a long way away from Sonbhadra. And the Prime Minister is, dare I say, being a little economical with the truth by linking the Operation Ganga with India's rising power, in a way linking it to new India nationalism. Let me tell you why. Now, the fact is, this is not the first time that India has been involved in such large-scale evacuation operations. We can go back to 1990 and the Gulf War in Kuwait, when, if you might recall, BP Singh and the Janata Dal government was in power. BP Singh was the Prime Minister, and then an airlift through Air India helped evacuate more than 170,000 Indian citizens. Yes, the operation took much longer, between August 13th and October 28th, 1990. Yes, the fighting was more or less over and the land was by then occupied by the Iraqis, unlike now when there is this missile fight going on between the Russians and the Ukrainians. But it was still the largest evacuation of its kind by a civil airline. This was pre-liberalization. India had less infrastructure, less experience in conducting such operations. But the fact is, Air India, the government of India, and importantly expatriate Indians all got together to ensure that the job was done. No chest thumping by VP Singh, I recall, at the time. Let's switch to 2011, the war in Libya, where again, more than 15,000 Indians were rescued. Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister. There was a UPA government in power. Again, Air India rose to the occasion, a good old public sector carrier before, of course, it's now got privatized. The Indian Navy was there. Operation Safe Homecoming, as it was deemed a success. And again, I don't recall Dr. Manmohan Singh seeking to reap any electoral benefit from what had happened in that operation. Switch now to 2015. Narendra Modi ji is the Prime Minister. There is a civil war in Yemen. And once again, the government of India, an NDA government at the time, stands up to be counted. An operation is launched with the Indian Air Force, the Indian Navy, Air India, once again all involved. Nearly 5,000 Indians are evacuated safely. Again, credit to all involved in the operation. In each of these above instances, the Prime Minister was different, the party in power was different, but the final result was the same. And that's because the government of India, my friends, is a continuum. Indian citizens have been rescued from war-torn areas in the past, even before 2014, because the government of India saw it as their duty to rescue their citizens who are caught in a crisis. It is the untiring effort of our armed forces, of our public, good old, as I said, Maharaja Air India at the time, that ensured that all these operations were carried out smoothly. The political leadership on each of these occasions stood up to be counted, and we will thank them, and we must thank them. But for leaders to then consciously want to seek credit, take political mileage out of it, that is where I believe we go wrong. Because what is a duty to our citizens almost becomes as if we are doing some kind of a special out of the way favor to our citizens. Because if you engage in credit taking, my friends, then you must be ready to take the blame also. Then in Ukraine, for example, people will ask questions over the tragic death of a young student from Karnataka who was killed during the firing. Who will we hold responsible for that in Kharkiv? When thousands of students are struggling to reach the border, who will we hold responsible for that? Who will we hold responsible when our students are seen on video being pushed around by Ukrainian security guards? Who will we hold responsible for the number of students who are stuck in bunkers struggling to get food and water? Who are we going to hold responsible when the embassy in Kiev is clearly stretched to handle an emergency of this kind? When the initial advisories about asking Indians to evacuate came a little bit late, some would say in the middle of February, and were very generic in nature initially. Who are we going to hold responsible then for that? Who are we going to hold responsible if one were to say that the scale and speed of the Russian invasion caught our diplomats in the region off guard? Should we engage in a blame game then and target our officials? No, my friends. This is not a time for either credit taking or a blame game. Our officials on the ground have worked very hard. Many of them, I know, 24/7 have been working to evacuate our citizens. It is also unfair to blame the students, as some have attempted to do, suggesting why didn't they leave earlier. Please, for God's sake, understand, these are students, many of them medical students, who the university was not allowing them to go because they were being forced to do offline classes. Many of them didn't have the kind of monies to take those Air India flights in the month of February. Then when I hear a minister and senior politician saying, oh, why did these students have to go all the way to Ukraine, to a small country, to study? I mean, surely these are not the kind of comments that we need to see from public representatives when these students are traumatized and caught in a war-torn zone. A blame game by the political opposition is something which is avoidable in the midst of war. But at the same time, it is, in my view, a little crude to constantly seek political mileage out of an unfolding humanitarian crisis. I recall during the Uttarakhand floods too, 2013, Prime Minister Modi was then Chief Minister of Gujarat. He comes into Uttarakhand, and it appears that his entire propaganda machine then gets to work and almost calls it a Rambo-like operation, and almost suggests as if Mr. Modi was responsible for the rescue of people during the Uttarakhand floods. Surely Mr. Modi did contribute, and his team did, as did many others. But is it to be given to the credit of an individual at a time like that? And should the work being done by our national disaster relief forces, who are also in Uttarakhand, be undermined in any way? We are, I know, my friends, in this age of personality cult building. This is the personality cult building politics, part of which involves an attempt to suggest that an individual is greater than institutions, which tries to suggest almost as if India has become a rising power only after 2014. It is my belief that this is a highly skewed line of thinking that only undermines the idea of a collective nationhood rather than strengthens it in any meaningful manner. Let me just add 3 more points, quick points. I'm glad that so many union ministers are there at the airport to receive the returning students as they come back with roses. Some of them, of course, 4 union ministers have flown to the neighboring countries to help the evacuation process. Good. At times like this, you do need people out there to give that personal touch to these traumatized students. But don't make it again an opportunity to build your public profile. It's more your attempt to facilitate the students. Please take, if you want to take photo ops, please do it once the entire exercise is over. Personal touch, I recall Sushma Swaraj, former External Affairs Minister, the late Sushma Swaraj, how she would use social media creatively to reach out to people by sending them the message, be it for a visa or if their baggage was lost. I think at the time of a crisis, you need that human touch. So it's good to have ministers on the ground. No problem with that. Second, by codenaming the rescue effort as Operation Ganga, those in a way you're giving the game away, because elections in UP are there and Ma Ganga must be remembered at a time like this by our vote seeking netas. Finally, the one big difference I sense between the pre-2014 evacuations and now is the role of the media, especially social media. This is the age of real-time information, also of fake news and WhatsApp forwards. What happens as a result is you get bombarded constantly with viral videos, some of which may be true, some of which may be false, some of which may give an exaggerated response to what's happening on the ground. Angry students or students saying Bharat Mata ki Jai. Either way, my friends, this is why it is important for our netas and those in charge to stay calm and not play to the gallery at times like this. There are times, my friends, when I believe the system can do with a little less PR, little less event marketing and obvious propaganda. A calamitous war is surely one such time. Think about that. That was the Straight Bat. Do of course subscribe to my YouTube channel for many more such videos. For now, stay well, stay safe. Namaskar, and let's get all us Indian citizens back home safely. That's the prayer. Bye.